In December of 2020, I moved to Utah after graduating with my bachelor's degree from Brigham Young University, Idaho. Since I've been living in Utah, there have been a few things that people from Utah do that I do not understand. One of those things is how intense the fans for both BYU and the University of Utah can be, especially when BYU and the University of Utah play each other in sports. It makes total sense that there would be some sort of rivalry between students and alumni who attended these universities. However, the most interesting thing that I've observed is how intense fans who didn't attend these universities are. Since I've been living in Utah, there were a few times where I would wear my BYUI shirts, not thinking much about it. Then, would later receive some sort of ribbing about how much better the University of Utah is to BYU. All coming from people I know who did not attend the University of Utah. I'm certain the majority of the University of Utah fans are civil and are not like this. But this has made me wonder, why do fandoms exist? Why do people feel so strongly about their fandoms? And what is the satisfaction people get from their fandoms? I'm your host, Jack Taggart, and on this episode, I interview 4 people and ask how they got into their fandoms, why they are a fan, and how does fandom bring meaning and purpose into their lives. This is my search for meaning and purpose. I introduced this episode describing my observation on how strange the fandom and rivalry between BYU and the University of Utah is. In an effort to understand this fandom and rivalry, I interviewed someone who attended BYU and is a self-described diehard BYU fan.
My name is Grant Rich. This is how I find my meaning and purpose in life. When I was young, for some reason, BYU sports, probably my grandpa was a BYU sports fan, and I just gravitated to BYU sports. I like sports anyway, but they had some players when I was really young, and that was before the games were on television. I would listen on my radio and listen to the BYU football games and the BYU basketball games, and I just had this draw to BYU sports. Again, probably started with my grandpa, and then listened and watched some games with my dad, and I decided I wanted to go to BYU. And the funny thing is, I wanted to go to BYU primarily because I was a BYU sports fan. And didn't think much about the college, but I went to BYU. I graduated from BYU. My wife, the first time I met her, I was so impressed because I finally met someone that knew as much about BYU sports as I did. She grew up a big BYU sports fan, loved it. Our first date, we talked for about an hour and a half, 2 hours about BYU sports.
How has, I guess maybe this enriched or blessed your life, or maybe perhaps maybe blessed the lives of others?
Well, it's become a great family tradition. My father-in-law and mother-in-law were the ones that got the season tickets initially, and it started with their 4 kids, and then as their kids got married, the spouses came, and then as we've all had children, so it's grown. But it's interesting. My wife's dad wasn't really a sports fan. He just wasn't a sports fan, but he looked at this as a great family tradition, and that's what it's become. And so to us, it's more than just a game. It's another one of those core values, family, and it's a chance to get together and enjoy doing something together as a family. Again, we have a group of about 20-ish family, and we all go together. Some of those like football a lot more than others. Same with basketball. Some of them, but it's just become so much more. We laugh together. We visit, these tailgating gatherings that we have before the games. We'll just sit or stand or sit and laugh and talk with one another. And so it's funny. No other people over the years, a lot of people haven't understood this about our family because it's been such a binding activity for our family for these 38 years. When we tell other people, hey, we can't make it to whatever the scheduled event is because we have tickets to the BYU football game, sometimes we get some very strange responses. People say, well, it's a game. But this is more than a game to us. And that's why Wendy's dad wanted this to continue. Again, he wasn't a big sports fan, but to have the family together, we drive down together, we follow each other, we're combining families and vehicles, we're eating together, we're laughing together, it's just become so much more our fandom than just a game. It's a family experience together. And so maybe that's where ours differs a little bit from some other people, is that we've combined several things that we enjoy, family, fandom, and food, I guess, eating together before and also after the game. And so it's really been a great experience.
I guess in your mind, is there some sort of benchmark, I guess, to be a fan?
Ooh, good question. To me, I guess I don't like fickle fans. And I guess when you take the word fan, it comes from fanatical. And, so I guess a fan can respond how a fan wants to. It's their prerogative. But to me, I don't like fickle fans. I'm diehard no matter what happens. You see some fans that, the going gets tough for their specific team or what they're a fan of, and they jump off the bandwagon. Once I choose a team, and I've had friends over the years that were first they're a fan of this, then they switch and they're a fan of the opposite, then they're a fan of this. Uh-huh. I'm not like that. I'm a BYU fan. I've been a BYU fan since I was, a young boy, and I never wavered. So as far as a benchmark, to me, I just think if you're a fan, be a fan and support your team. I mean, I see some fans that, they get, and I guess it's anyone's right to become frustrated, but they say, I'm not going to follow them anymore. I mean, let me give you another example on this. Is a little bit off topic, but I'm also a big baseball fan, and I grew up as a Cincinnati Reds baseball fan. There's not a professional baseball team, a major league team here, but when I was a boy, I started following the Cincinnati Reds, and they basically, for the last 20 years, are one of the laughing stocks of professional baseball. And I have people all the time, and I follow them every day. Every day, I'm diehard. I read the Cincinnati papers, and I get some people that say, why are you a Reds fan? They're terrible. They started off, they almost broke the record for the worst start ever this year. But I'm still diehard. And so I guess to your question, once I'm a fan, I'm a fan. I'm a fan no matter what. I love that team through thick or thin. I'm a fan. So that's the benchmark for me. Someone that really supports the team and is there through thick or thin. I think there's some fans that, if you say die hard, they might look at it a little bit different. My family, like I've said, we've gone to these games for years. We're not mean about it. I've had work associates that it becomes a hatred against the opposite team, the rival team. And I have seen that right here where we live with the rival team. And to me, I try and stay away from that. I've always tried to be able to laugh, and if you take it to the point that, and I've seen this in friends, neighbors, work associates in this area, kind of that rivalry between BYU and Utah, that there's a literal hatred. You can go online or some of these different social media platforms and see an absolute hatred. I don't like that, and I don't want anything to do that. To me, I think it's great that there's other rival teams, and I'm not gonna let my fandom get in the way of my associations with friends, neighbors, work associates. And I see people that do that, and at a job that I used to have in Salt Lake, there was literal hatred one against another during a football season, just because one wore blue and the other wore red. And to me, that's taking it too far. So I don't know if that's answering your question, but I think you can be a diehard fan and love your team without hating the other fans.
How do you find meaning and purpose in being a BYU fan?
Cool. It gives me a diversion. I think life and our world is crazy. I mean, you can read every day about, just lately, it's mass shooting after mass shooting. There's war, the inflation, the economy, there's so many things. So for me, fandom is a fun diversion from the craziness of this world. It's a chance to, again, the piece of the family that I talked about, gathering together with my family and going and spending some time together, doing something that we enjoy and being together, and forgetting maybe the stress of work and the stress and the craziness of the world. So to me, that's, I guess, how I'd answer that question. And I feel like that's a great benefit. And I think people need those diversions, whatever they are. To some people, it's not sports. It's a diversion is going to a musical event, a theatrical event, whatever it might be. There's other diversions, and there's great opportunities in all these different areas. Reading a great book, there's a lot of different opportunities that I think provide that same thing. For me, being a fan of the teams that I follow, it's relaxing, it's fun, it's something that I enjoy, and then you couple it with family and it makes it that much better.
I'm not going to lie, I was actually surprised at some of the responses that Grant gave me on why he's a BYU fan. Whenever you think of a sports fan, you think of a stereotypical sports fan who gets way into it, and y'all know what I'm talking about. However, after my interview with Grant, I've learned that being a sports fan, that you don't have to stoop to that level. Rather, it can be something that can bring a family close together and can, for a brief moment, cause someone to forget about the day-to-day struggles of life. However, not everyone is a sports fan. To further explore how fandom can bring meaning and purpose to a person's life, I interview someone who is a fan of one of the biggest and most popular fandoms in the world.
My name is Alex Williams, and this is how I find my meaning and purpose. I almost feel like I was born into liking Star Wars, almost like it wasn't a choice, because my dad was 4 when Star Wars came out, and then he watched the subsequent movies. He was into Star Trek and Doctor Who and all of the sci-fi stuff. And so when I was born, it was like one of my earliest memories was watching the pod race in episode 1, which I know like people hate on that scene and people hate on that movie as a whole, but that pod race is what sold me on Star Wars. That was the thing. And then my first DVD was Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. That was the first movie I ever owned. And so that's really, I was born into it and just kind of brought up with it. And then it kind of these keystone mile points in the memories of my childhood, it continued to sell me on itself.
With a Star Wars fan, that is a kind of a broad spectrum. Where on the spectrum would you say you and I guess perhaps your family was?
I'm probably the biggest fan in my family. I kind of took it and run with it. My dad and brother are close seconds. My sisters, they're into it, but not huge into it. but it kind of was a family thing. I mean, as a family in general, we would go see movies together. That was like the family outing, was going to see movies together. And of course, Star Wars was part of that. And so I think as a family, even if we weren't Star Wars fans, we were movies fans.
There are some people I know, they kind of do that gatekeeping. Why do you think that is?
I think people like to feel like they're involved with something special or unique, maybe. And so when we gatekeep, it's kind of like when, when I say, oh, my dad was 4 when Star Wars came out, and like that was like a big deal for him as a kid, right? That's almost like me saying, well, I was like an original Star Wars fan, right? Like, and people do that because they say, well, I was here first, right? It's like anytime there's like a big famous artist or YouTuber or podcaster or whatever, it's like, well, okay, I was in their first 100,000. Oh yeah, well, I was in their first 10,000, followers. And I think that just makes us feel good, to feel like we're in some sort of exclusive special group, right? And I don't like to do that. I know I probably do that subconsciously with a lot of things, and maybe even with Star Wars. But I think that's why we do that, because we like to feel special.
Do you think that's healthy?
I think maybe there is a little bit of healthy gatekeeping, like if one of my siblings, defended me against a friend I've had for 6 months, right? And one of my siblings says, hey, whoa, you don't know Alex the way I know Alex, like back off. So maybe there are healthy spaces for gatekeeping to say, I've been here from the beginning, or I know more than you. But I also don't think that should exclude people from getting to know more, right? Like if a Star Wars fan, like the example I mentioned before, if a Star Wars fan has only seen one Star Wars movie, you should welcome them to consume more. You should say, oh yeah, and what did you think? And oh, gee, what are you going to watch next, right? Instead of, oh, well, I mean, you really don't know what you're talking about, right? So I think maybe it's the way that we gatekeep. Maybe that's when there might be some healthy gatekeeping. I don't know. This is all like a very broad opinion.
How do you, I guess, continue to, foster this fandom, even though as an adult, you're going to school right now, have other dealing with adult things, how do you, continue to foster that fandom?
I stay into it. Like I keep consuming the stuff. I don't read the books or the comics or anything, but the stuff that gets put out on Disney Plus and the movies, if they ever put movies back in the theaters for Star Wars again. They've been really focused on the Disney Plus stuff, but I consume all of that like the day it comes out. If I have time in the morning before I get on with my day, I will consume it that morning. If I'm up till midnight and it drops on Disney Plus, I'm like, well, it's midnight. I know I was about to go to bed, but if I watch it now, it'll be 1 a.m. And, that's only an hour. So I watch it immediately. So I keep up with all of it. And then I have a small group of friends that each of them, I'll send them separate messages. What do you think of the Obi-Wan, episode that came out today? Oh, I'm so excited for Andor. And oh, can't wait to see this. So that's the way that I keep up with the fandom is that way.
But when you say you keep up with it, like us, what does that mean to you then? Like why do you continue to do it after years of doing it, and after I even say probably the other more important things you could be doing,
Yeah, definitely more important things I could be doing. But there's something, there's the sheer entertainment value of seeing people, swing around lightsabers and shoot blasters and wear these cool costumes and talk about the mystical force. There are really cool things about that. It's a bit of an escape for me. And even I'm willing to admit I'm a grown-up. I'm willing to admit that probably most of Star Wars content isn't spectacular. Like, it probably has more disappointments than hurrahs, right? But I still consume it because it makes me feel good, ties me back to my childhood. It's something I can talk about with my friends. And sometimes it really makes a big impact on my life. And that's something I really appreciate.
How does this impact your life?
You know, when you watch movies or read a book or a TV show, and you think, wow, that was me. I can relate to that. I'm going through something that makes me feel close to this. I've had that experience with Star Wars. So, spoilers for the end of season 5 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the animated show, by the way. But at the end of season 5, Ahsoka goes through this whole thing in this 4-episode arc, and she realizes that the Jedi Order is not the place where she needs to be. And for me, watching that breaks my heart every time, because I left the religion that I grew up in, that I was raised in, that I had friends and family in. And then when I see Ahsoka leave something that wasn't good for her, but also she knew she couldn't be there, but she wanted to be there, it just really, really hit home for me. Even though that's one short series of episodes in these hundreds of hours produced, for Star Wars content. But watching that was like a moment where I'm like, oh, like I feel seen. I feel like I'm being represented. And I feel like that character, even though it's fake, like it's not real. She's an alien in an animated TV show, for children primarily, right? But when I watched that, I could see myself in her, and I was like, somebody gets it.
How much of this fandom, you being a Star Wars fan, is part of your identity?
Well, I mean, the fact that I consume at least the TV and movie content, I'd say it's a pretty big part of my identity. That said, I have my identity tied up to a lot of different things. If a wizard came down and told me, cast a spell on me, you can no longer watch Star Wars for the rest of your life, I'd be supremely disappointed. Like, I'd be upset. But I also know that I'd get over it, right? I have other pieces of my identity that maybe would take a bit more center stage. So it's a big part, but it's not the only part.
What do you get from being a Star Wars fan?
I get a lot. I think I get relationships. I get laughs. I get great entertainment and interesting behind the scenes, watching these featurettes on how it was made and all of that. And I get something to look forward to as well. I get to think like, the next episode, the next series. And that's really cool. I get an excuse to contact my friends like you, Jack, and talk about like, what did you think of the new series? How did you watch the new episode? Have you been keeping up? And those things are really satisfying. And I think maybe it's weird that a TV show and a series of films and all the other content they make out, that they put out, can create that atmosphere. Almost like I have friendships based on Star Wars, based on an imaginary thing. But I think even though it's imaginary and even though it's made as entertainment, I've been able to create real connections through it and use it as an excuse to carry on those connections. And I think that makes it worth it.
As far as I know, neither Grant nor Alex have gained any fame or notoriety because of their fandom, and frankly, most fans don't. However, there are those who do get famous for their fandom. To further explore fandom, I interview a TikTok star who became famous because of her fandom. Just an FYI, my equipment decided to crap out on this interview, so if the audio sounds poor, I apologize. Also, this interview took place in July of 2023.
My name is Walbank, and this is how I find my meaning and purpose in life.
You've obviously, from what I've been able to see, I guess kind of make Harry Potter or some sort of jokes about Harry Potter kind of a bit of your platform. And so I guess for one, how did you get into it? And I guess how did you get into it?
Completely by accident. I did a British program called Camp America when I was 19, and with that, they take English teenagers and they put them out on a placement at one of the summer camps, and I had the best time. It was great, and then I went travelling afterwards with one of my friends, Matt, he's tall and ginger, and I used to have really short blonde hair, and we were stood in the airport in Arizona, I think, and this girl came over to us and she was like, "Oh my God, I loved you in that movie," and we just looked at each other like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "You're Draco Malfoy, right? From Harry Potter." And me and my friend just burst out laughing. And it was something my friends never ever let me live it down, and it just sort of became an inside joke. And then in February last year, I used to work as a kids' party entertainer, so I used to dress up as a princess for kids' parties, and I was making a tutorial of how to lay your hair flat for a wig. And within that, I had to slick my hair back to the back of my head, and I sent a video message to a group chat with some of my friends. I was like, "No, why do some girls look really nice with their hair pulled back and I look like Draco Malfoy?" And my friends were like, "That's hilarious, put it on TikTok." So I did. And then I woke up the next morning and it had got 500,000 views. By the end of the week, it had got 5 million views. And now a year later, it's got almost 21 million views. And I just sort of ran with it then. People wanted to see more Draco, so funnily enough, I'd always been a Slytherin since I watched the Harry Potter films, so I'd got a Slytherin robe. That was it wasn't like a fun cosplay robe, it was like a dressing gown, like a house robe that you wear to go to bed. And I started off with that and just made a few videos and then met other people in the Harry Potter cosplay community, so I bought some real robes. And it's just sort of become like a separate life form. Like there's me and then there's Draco. And people are always way happier to see Draco.
And not gonna lie, that's actually where how I found you, was through that reel. So
I feel like that's how everybody's discovered my profile. Is they've probably seen me as either Voldemort or Draco. And then every now and again I'll post a video as me and they're like, "Who is that? I have no idea who that girl is." There's a massive portion of the internet that only found out I was a girl 4 months ago. Because so many people have come on during just the Draco stuff and then have come on and been like, "Whoa, this is a woman, not a 12-year-old boy." And they've been incredibly confused by it, which is hilarious. I love reading the comments and DMs from people like, "I've only just realised that you're not a boy." It's great. Really funny.
Besides from it being part of your platform, but why are you a fan of the Harry Potter series?
Since we watched Harry Potter with my mum, it's sort of become like a family tradition now. Every Christmas we sit down, in that weird period between Christmas and New Year when no one knows what day it is and everybody just eats beige food and walks around the house in the same pair of pajamas they've been wearing since Christmas Day. It's just become like our family tradition that we watch Harry Potter now. And I've got such a fondness for it and so much nostalgia for it that it's just become part of our family thing. And I think it's the same for a lot of people's families as well. And the other side of it is being a British kid running off into that world and being like, "Oh my God, when will my Hogwarts letter get here?" Spoiler alert, it never came. That's why I'm still dressing up as a wizard now. it's one of those things that because it was such a nice thing for our family, I just hold so much fondness and so much love for it. And that, I think that's why I've got so much of an attachment to it. And it just happens to be a pretty good set of films as well.
Where do you hope your fandom takes you?
I'm already so blown away with where the fandom's taking me, because I've fallen more in love with Harry Potter through all this, because I suppose you could say I was sort of more of a casual fan, and now like if I could turn the camera around and I wasn't moving and there wasn't boxes everywhere, so then like I've got like tiny pop vinyl figures of Dobby that like have been sent, and I've proper fallen in love with it all over again. I think in a way that I wouldn't have if all of this hadn't have happened. And I got to meet the real Draco Malfoy because people cried out for that, and that was amazing. And I'm going to LeakyCon, which is such a huge deal. For anyone who doesn't know what LeakyCon is, it's a fandom-based convention, and it was started to celebrate Harry Potter a few years ago. And I remember them announcing the very first one years ago, and I've wanted to go for years and years and years and years, and I'm getting to go this year as a guest and sit on panels with some of the Harry Potter cast. And honestly, all of this could end tomorrow, and I'd be thrilled. Like, the fandom's done so much for me already.
I guess with any fandom, or I guess really with anything, I guess things can be taken too far. So with that, do you think you've ever gone too far?
I don't think I think I've turned the line, because my version of Draco is like the most RuPaul yassified version of Draco you could possibly think of. Like, my version of Draco has got nail extensions and stuff. He's wild. He's pretty wild. I think the fandom as a whole has got a reputation for being able to take it far. Like, the amount of wild fan fiction you hear about is crazy, and the amount of messages I've had from people asking me to do certain kind of adult content of Draco, that I personally would never do, because that's just not something I really want. But I know other people have gone there, and I think you get that with every fandom though. Like, there's a pocket of the fandom that is interested in certain aspects of it for very different reasons to what everyone else is. I mean, we all saw Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life. It's blazoned in everyone's memories. I don't think I'll ever forget it. Every now and again, we'll be like chatting, and somebody will be like, "Do you remember that exists?" And we'll be like, "Oh yeah, who did that?"
Yeah.
And I think there's something like that for every fandom, and I'm hoping I'll never get to that point. Yes.
If for whatever reason overnight social media was gone, Harry Potter was gone, nobody remembered Harry Potter, what would you do? How would your life be different?
So I'm in quite a fortunate position where social media is my second job, and I also really love my first job. And I perform for a living. I don't know whether they do them the same in the States, but I'm a tribute act. So I do shows as Billie Eilish and as a British singer called Anne Marie. So I would probably put a lot more. I mean, I put a lot of time into my job, but I probably put a lot more into that, because I genuinely love performing, and that's why I went into that job. But if Harry Potter and social media all cease to exist tomorrow, I'd probably get a lot more sleep.
How do you find meaning and purpose in being a fan of the Harry Potter series?
I think it's one of the biggest parts of my purpose, especially through my content. It's built a community, and it's a community where no one cares what you do for a living, no one cares where you come from, no one cares what you look like. The only thing they care about is what house you're in and what your favourite spell is. And that's such a nice common ground to have. Like, let's just take everything else out of it and talk about wizards. And that's such a nice thing, especially as an adult that's living through one of the hardest periods that we've had, like coming off the back of a pandemic and into a cost of living crisis. It's nice just to be able to get together with people that enjoy something that I enjoy without having to talk about any of the real life stuff. And I mean, yeah, the real life stuff absolutely needs talking about, and we should talk about it as much as we can and give as much people as much help and support they need. But sometimes people don't want to talk about it. Sometimes people just need company and to talk about something that's a common interest of theirs. And if that common interest happens to be wizards, I'm right there with you. And that's where it's found a lot of meaning, a lot of purpose for me, is in that community and in that finding common ground with people, I think.
While editing this episode, I have realized that having some sort of fandom can bring someone into a tribe, a friend group, or a family, so to speak, where the common bond is your shared interest in that fandom. But aside from that, I've realized that fandoms can help people with their well-being, whether that is strengthening relationships, providing a brief escape from the challenges of life, or even gaining strength and inspiration in making a difficult life choice. At the time of release of this episode, I had been living in Utah for 4 years and even started a grad program at the University of Utah. And I still don't understand the rivalry between BYU and the University of Utah. But after going through this exploration, I can understand and even appreciate why fandom would mean so much to a person.
My name is Alex Williams.
And Walbank.
Grant Rich. This is how I find
How I find my meaning
my meaning
and purpose.
and purpose in life.